I was in Rome in the year 2000, and I had done the breakthrough experience, which was on a weekend. And at the end of the program, a lady named Antonella, beautiful Italian girl, asked if I'd like to tour a little Rome before I left in the afternoon, late afternoon, to go back into the United States. I said, absolutely. So we walked through the various regions of Rome, and we came upon a square right after lunch. And it was a roped off area about the size of a football field. And the entire square was covered in red rose petals. And in the center of the square was a marble base with a bronze statue. And there were 7 to 8 story buildings all around the square. And it was roped off and no one was allowed in there. And it was a special day, a celebration and an honoring of a theologian, astronomer, and philosopher named Giordano Bruno. You may have seen the recent Cosmos, possibly, and they refer to him in one of the episodes. Now, I'd read about Giordano Bruno in astronomy text and in philosophy text and theological text. Leibniz and many others, and even Einstein, and even Carl Sagan studied him. But Bruno was a daring individual, young and inspired. And no matter what he discovered, he was not afraid to speak up about it. Most people were subordinate to the church at the time, and subordinate to tradition and convention. Few were mavericks. Very few had the courage to stand up with new, innovative ideas, because the church and state were kind of joined. So if you said something that went against the powers to be, you were silenced or killed, like Copernicus and Galileo and people like this. So Bruno made a declaration that we live in an infinite universe with infinite worlds, with infinite beings. We now know that's perceived as true. But at the time, he was way ahead of his times. And they put him in prison for saying things like this, because it went against the Ptolemaic and Aristotelian construct of a geocentric world, where the earth was the center of it all, so the church could rule the world at the time. And so they imprisoned him and eventually burned him at the stake. But before he was burned at the stake, they gave him an opportunity to make a statement in case he would like to recant and save his life and then be imprisoned, never to be speaking again. And he said, yes, I have something to say. And he looked down at the torchbearers who were standing there and the people in the square watching him, about to be put in flames. And he said that I'll bet your fear in lighting this flame is greater than mine in receiving it. For though you may destroy my mortal body, you will never destroy my immortal message and soul. And someday people will understand that what I say is true and my message will get out, which is my mission. So he was not concerned about his mortality. His mission transcended the terrestrial mortality. And when somebody does that, they made their mark in legacy. And today he's now on movies, he's in textbooks. He's a leader, ahead of his time. Now, why that was so important to me is because when he was in his 20s, they wrote a posthumous biography. He wrote a biography of how he wanted to be perceived 500 years into the future. 400 years later, I was sitting at the square, and they were honoring him as a genius 400 years ahead of his time. And the thing he wrote in his posthumous biography is now reality. He gave himself permission to see a vision that no people could see. He was able to transcend the tradition and convention and the beliefs of the people at the time. He's willing to endure whatever opposition and challenge and ridicule and condemnation about his life, because his certainty exceeded other people's doubts. And it shook people. I wonder what would happen if we walked that path with our own mission. I wonder if we could leave our mark in 400 years. And I am certain that at the 500-year mark, people will look back and see that he was truly a genius ahead of his time. So that leads me to ask the question, because that inspired me. That very night, I went back and I wrote my posthumous biography of how I wanted to be perceived 1,000 years into the future. And I started mapping it out. And I actually had the opportunity to have some of that mapped out and fulfilled. We go around and say we're immortal souls, but very few people write immortal goals. We live in small space and time horizons and don't give ourselves permission to play a bigger game. But the people that left their mark in history, that changed the course of history, the ones that stepped out of that diving board and took a quantum leap out into the mysteries and took risk in declaring new ideas, those are the people to participate in. You can't put your hand in the pot of glue of those individuals without some of that sticking.